Hello, my name's Phil Parnham. I'm a Chartered Building Surveyor, and in this video I want to talk you through how I approach carrying out inspections of residential property. Although I like to think that I follow best practice, this is not a definitive guide. This is just how I prefer to do it. And hopefully this will give those people who are new to residential surveying a helpful and useful guide. This video covers the instances in residential dwellings, including lifting inspection chamber covers and inspecting the plumbing, heating and electrical systems. It doesn't cover diagnosing specific defects or other property problems, but instead focuses on the process of inspection itself. On most inspections, the biggest challenge will be finding and lifting the inspection chamber covers. They can be hidden in planted areas, concealed by garden ornaments, and even in some cases tarmacked over completely. But when you locate them, you then have to establish whether it's possible to lift the cover safely. In this case, the only inspection cover within the boundary of the property is in the back garden. And because it's the only inspection chamber, I'm very keen to get a look at the drains. The cover is an inset type with large stones set in concrete to match the adjacent path and a close fitting steel frame all around. Although this is likely to be too heavy to lift, I always like to make sure, and I find the easiest way to do this is to jump up and down on the cover, or at least rock from foot to see if the cover moves at all. In this case it did so I thought I would investigate whether it would be easy to lift. It has small holes at each corner into which special lifting keys can be used. Although I carry standard keys, none of them fitted these particular holes. Therefore I use what I call my heavy lifting gear, including a crowbar, a large screwdriver and a brick bolster. I also have a lump hammer to encourage reluctant inspection chamber covers to lift. As you can see, although I could lift the cover, it was too thick and heavy for one person to manoeuvre safely. Consequently, I replaced the lid without inspecting what was beneath, and will not only tell the client of this restriction to my normal inspection routine, but also explain the implications of not being able to inspect the drains. As previously mentioned, the extent of the service's inspection depends on the terms and conditions of the service you are providing. For example, the RICS Home Buyer Service does not include the testing or operation of any of the services, whereas the RICS Building Survey does. In the latter case, it uses the phrase, "the services will be observed during normal operation, but no testing will be carried out." To me, this means you switch things on and off. So, in this case, assuming I'm carrying out a building survey or an equivalent commission, I will usually put the plug into basins, sinks and baths and turn on the hot and cold water taps. I will let the appliances fill up a little and then remove the plug. As the water runs out, I check around the waste and trap underneath for any obvious leaks. Although I turn the taps on, I'm not testing the plumbing's efficiency. I am merely seeing if the water actually comes out. This is because I've seen so many surveyors' reports that state the pressure in the cold water supply is satisfactory and the hot water supply warms up quickly. This suggests the plumbing services have been tested in service, and when all I'm saying is, does it turn on or not? Operating the shower is also important, but make sure you step aside before you're caught in the deluge. In my experience, a lot of wood rot often results from small but persistent leaks around the junction between the outgo of the WC and the connection with the soil and vent pipe. Flushing the toilet and looking around the back can help with this assessment. I do a similar sort of thing with the kitchen sink. However, in most homes, the cupboard under the sink is usually packed with cleaning fluids, pet foods, and other long forgotten items. To see the waste pipe system properly, you may have to remove a number of items to get a clear view. But what is a reasonable number of items to remove? Only you can make that decision based on the particular circumstances. In my opinion, the under sink area is important. There could be a number of control valves under there, including the stopcock, possible leaks, dampness, and even wood rot. Therefore, I don't mind moving a few bottles of cleaning fluid and other possessions to get a better view. The electrical system in any property is a specialist installation, and this can only be assessed by those with appropriate qualifications and experience. However, I think residential practitioners should be able to make a measured assessment of the main elements of the system based on a visual inspection of those parts we can actually see. Before I go through this in detail, it is important to say the first stage of this assessment is to ask the owner or the occupier whether the system has been recently tested. The Electrical Safety Council gives the advice that a residential electrical system should be tested every 10 years or on a change of occupancy. This latter point is the most important, as most inspections are carried out when the sale of the property is planned. In other words, a change of occupancy. Consequently, I would expect the owner or occupier to have had the system assessed sometime in the recent past, say within the last year. If not, then I would recommend the whole system is tested before the client commits to the purchase. Even if there is a test certificate, I still have to inspect the system to make sure it hasn't been damaged or changed since that last test. The first part of this will be finding and inspecting the incoming main supply and the associated consumer units. These are usually in the same location, apart from when they're not. And here, in this particular case, the meter and the consumer unit is in a high-level cupboard in the entrance hallway. When inspecting these features, I am looking for obvious problems and whether the installation looks relatively recent and up to a satisfactory general standard. One defining feature I always look for is whether the system is fitted with what they call a residual current device, or RCD for short. This will give at least part of the system some increased level of protection against electrocution and fire. But please beware, one or two positive features does not mean the system is safe, so always err on the side of safety. If the owner does not provide me with evidence of a recent test, then I'm very likely to call for further investigations. For the rest of the electrical system, I operate those parts which are safe to do so. For example, switching lights, extract fan, electric showers, fan heaters, and other fixed appliances on and off. As I previously mentioned with the plumbing services, this is not to test the system's efficiency, but just to check whether these features work or not. A similar approach should be adopted with the heating system. Whether it is powered by gas, electric, oil, or even solid fuel, it should be assessed by a person with the appropriate skills and qualifications. In the case of most types of heating system, these should be checked every 12 months. If the owner is unavailable to provide evidence that this has been done, then a further investigation should be recommended before your client commits to the purchase. In this property, there is a gas-fired central heating boiler, providing both hot water and the central heating. I usually open any parts of the boiler casing that are hinged and meant to be opened by the user. I make a note of the manufacturer and the model number so I could possibly cross-check this with the EPC to make sure it's been entered correctly, and look underneath for any obvious faults such as leaks. Most guidance states the surveyor should not operate the heating in unoccupied properties, and certainly should not turn services on where they've been switched off. This is because you will not know whether the system is safe to use or whether it's been turned off because of dangerous faults. If the property is occupied, then I ask the occupier to operate the system, because only they can take responsibility for its use. And I can then make a basic assessment of whether it's working or not. I hope you found this video useful and helpful. There are a number of other different sorts of episodes, and you might find those of interest as well. And to access these, just go through your normal online account. Thanks for watching.